Hi everybody, what's up? I'm Ehren, this is Question Period Canada. We're bringing you the highlights from today's Question Period, November 22nd. Just the highlights, no interruptions, no delays, no translators, no Mr. Speaker delaying the process, just the good stuff. Today's a bit of a sad day. There was a tragedy that occurred at Rainbow Bridge. There was a terrorist bombing. People died, people were injured. I don't know the fallout of that situation yet. But Poliev launches into the first question about the situation, and Trudeau is there to give an answer.
Questions orales, oral questions, l'honorable chef de
the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
We've just heard media reports of a terrorist attack and explosion at the Niagara crossing of the Canada-U.S. border. At least two people are dead, one is injured. It is the principal responsibility of government to protect the people. Can the Prime Minister give us an update on what he knows and what action plan he will immediately implement to bring home security for our people?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this is obviously a very serious situation in Niagara Falls. There was a vehicle explosion at the Rainbow Bridge crossing. I've been briefed by the NSIA and the Minister of Public Safety. CBSA, RCMP, and Transport Canada are all fully engaged in providing the necessary support. There are a lot of questions, and we are following up to try and get as many answers as rapidly as possible. We are in close contact with U.S. officials, and will continue to work closely with them. We will continue to be engaged. We will provide updates. Updates I can give right now is there are 4 border crossings that are right now closed: Rainbow Bridge, Whirlpool Bridge, Queenston Bridge, and Peace Bridge. Additional measures are being contemplated and activated at all border crossings across the country. We are taking this extraordinarily seriously, and Mr. Speaker, I will have to excuse myself now to go get further updates and work on this very serious situation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So that Poliev question, that Trudeau answer, were a lot more solemn than we usually look forward to having in Question Period, but that's a situation. That Rainbow Bridge situation seems tough. Up next, though, Poliev lights up Randy Boissonnault, and it's a laugh. He asks a strange question to open up. Watch how it goes. It's going to come up later in the show.
What's up? Rent's up. Rates are up. Taxes up. Debt up. Time's up for this government, Mr. Speaker. After 8 years, they're not worth the cost. And now this Prime Minister cakes on another $20 billion of inflationary spending and will bring up the interest payments on our debt to a record-smashing $51 billion a year. With 2 million Canadians eating at a food bank every month and many facing the loss of their home, why won't they cancel this inflationary scam and replace it with a plan to balance the budget and bring down interest rates and inflation?
L'honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday's fall economic statement demonstrates the next phase in our plan to make sure that we have an economy that works for everyone. Mr. Speaker, the International Monetary Fund is predicting that Canada's growth will lead the G7 in 2024. We have the lowest debt-to-GDP ratio in the G7. And Mr. Speaker, while we are building housing, while we are moving on with our clean tax credits, while we are making sure that adoptive parents can have the benefits that they need, you know what's up, Mr. Speaker? The end of support for the Conservative Party for Ukrainians in this country and in Ukraine, as the Conservatives vote against the Canada-Ukraine free trade deal. Shame on them!
Pierre's question was about prices of things in Canada, inflation, carbon tax, groceries, housing costs, things like this. And Randy's answer seems strange to me because he said that the Conservatives don't support the Ukraine enough. In Poliev's next question, he's going to focus a little more on the Ukraine. And Karina Gould is going to try to answer that question and place the blame on the Conservatives not supporting Ukraine enough.
Chef de l'Opposition.
Actually, what's up is the Prime Minister has once again betrayed Ukraine. He betrayed Ukraine when he gave Putin that big turbine to pump his gas and fund his war. He betrayed Ukraine when he refused to sell Canadian gas to break European dependence on Putin. He betrayed Ukraine by failing to vet someone celebrated in this House who turned out to be a Nazi. And he's betraying Ukraine with this terrible agreement to force a carbon tax on Ukrainians that will destroy destroy their ability to fight a war and rebuild their economy. We will axe the tax and stand unequivocally with Ukrainians in their fight for freedom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if that were true, the members of the opposition would have voted in favor of the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement, an agreement that I will note the government of Ukraine asked Canada to do with them in a time of their utmost need when they're facing an illegal war of aggression from Russia. But instead of supporting Ukrainians in their time of need, instead of truly stand up for their fight for freedom, they vote against it on a red herring. Mr. Speaker, Canadians need to ask what the Conservatives are doing, and there's only one party that's betrayed Ukraine, and that's the Conservatives. Thank you.
It would appear that Karina Gould has tight alliances or allegiances to the Ukraine because she was very heated in her answer there. Up next, Jagmeet Singh, who's hard to trust these days. I used to have a lot of respect for the guy, not these days. He's got questions though about the Rainbow Bridge bombing. It's a solemn situation, this one.
South.
Mr. Speaker, I want to express my deep concern about the incident that we're just learning about at the Rainbow Bridge crossing between Canada and the United States. I want to acknowledge the work of the first responders, and we want to express also our deep concern for those reports that indicate that those that may be injured and potentially fatalities as well. Our deep concern about that. We want to know what's the update in terms of Canada's assistance in the investigation and the other steps to support those that have been impacted.
The Honourable House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for his question. We are deeply concerned about what we have all learned recently happened at the Peace Bridge between Canada and the United States. As the Prime Minister mentioned, this happened very recently. He and the Minister of Public Safety are being updated as we speak. We will share information with the House and indeed with all Canadians as we get more information. But at this time, we do want to express our deep condolences to the people and the families who have lost loved ones, and we will continue to be engaged in this very serious and worrisome manner. Thank you.
The tragedy that happened in Rainbow Bridge, let's leave that behind and not talk about it anymore today. It's too sad. What we're gonna do next, though, remember when Poliev asked his funny question earlier? What's up? He's got another question, but this time Seamus O'Regan, an MP from Newfoundland who used to be on CTV, tries to give a really funny answer, but it doesn't stick. Again, Seamus misses all the time.
Leader of the Opposition.
Fear and falsehoods are the only thing they can use to distract from their disastrous record. Mr. Speaker, they are the ones clawing back from seniors and from families with their quadrupling of the carbon tax. For the first time in Canadian history, we have 7 million people who are skipping meals because they can't afford to eat, and 2 million people, a record-smashing number, are now eating at food banks. There is a common-sense solution, which is the Conservative Bill C-234 to take taxes off the farmers who feed us. Will the Prime Minister back down again, stop fighting this common sense bill, and stop taxing our farmers so that our people can afford to eat?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are the government that decided that the retirement age should go back to 65, not 67, which was a decision that side of the House decided to make while their leader was in Davos, Switzerland. But let's stay in Europe for 1 second, Mr. Speaker, and talk about the appalling decision by these so-called conservatives to turn down a free trade agreement with a beacon of democracy like Ukraine. What is up with that party? That's what Canadians want to know. And this carbon tax excuse, no one's buying. What's up, Mr. Speaker?
Seamus O'Regan falls flat like that all the time. He tries every time to make a joke and maybe 5 or 10% of them hit. Not very often. He should give up on trying. The next person that we're going to see that Poliev is asking a question is Mary Ng. We don't hear from her very often, but she fires back in this question with a lot of energy, a lot of finger pointing. It's different to see. We don't see her speak very often.
Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the pathological obsession these Liberals have with carbon taxes has now reached a level where it is sick. This is how sick they are on the carbon tax. That they would use Ukraine's vulnerability in the middle of the war to impose impose their destructive carbon tax on the people of Ukraine and make it harder for them to rebuild after the war. We already know this Prime Minister was used as a Russian propaganda tool when he brought a Nazi into the House of Commons. Why is he trying to damage the Ukrainian economy with a destructive carbon tax in this terrible deal?
Minister for International Trade.
The only ones who are not supporting Ukraine are the Conservatives. Let's be clear. The Canada-Ukraine free trade deal does not impose a price on pollution on Ukraine. And you know why? Because Ukraine already has a price on pollution.
I bet you knew that already, right, James?
We're here to support them because the Conservatives are not.
There's been an awful lot of talk so far today about the Ukraine. I don't know why that is when things are so tough at home right here. Up next, Jagmeet is back and he's got a question for Adam Van Coverden. And Adam Van Coverden is going to get himself into trouble. He does too much talking today. Not right here, but it's going to come back and get him.
From Burnaby South.
The Prime Minister promised Canadians in 2021 he would impose an emissions cap on oil and gas producers. It's been 2 years of delay and disappointment. Families, municipalities, small businesses, and in the industrial sectors are investing in low-carbon solutions. But oil and gas emissions continue to rise unchecked. That doesn't look like climate leadership to me. Will the Prime Minister commit to releasing the oil and gas emissions cap framework with a 2030 target in line with science before COP28?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the member from Burnaby South, the leader of the New Democratic Party. It's refreshing to talk about how we fight climate change and not if we fight climate change, constantly with the Conservatives debating whether or not climate change even exists. I agree with the Speaker, with the leader of the NDP, Mr. Speaker. Establishing a cap on oil and gas emissions is one of the key commitments of our government's emissions reductions plan. Canada's oil and gas companies have proven repeatedly that they can innovate and develop new technologies and more competitive business models, and will continue to work with them on reducing their emissions with an emissions cap. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Those coalition governments sure do make for strange bedfellows. It's weird just to see it happen. Up next, though, Poliev again, and this time he's got Ryan Turnbull, who really makes himself look extra stupid with his answer. He does not look good in this answer. It's kind of a chuckle.
Leader of the Opposition.
What is risky and reckless is to spend $15 billion, which works out to $1,000 for every family in Canada, for a project that will employ foreign replacement workers. Those workers will displace our union jobs in this country. In other words, our money for foreign workers. This is according to the police from Windsor, the local Windsor municipal government. These are the facts. And if the Prime Minister has any other facts he'd like to share, why won't he just give us the contract?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, let's get real. These Conservatives have never been for workers. They don't understand that the fight against climate change creates prosperity for generations to come. These once-in-a-generation investments in the Next Star facility is bringing 2,500 permanent jobs to Windsor, which is bringing back the auto industry. I don't know how you can spin this negatively, but it's beyond me that the Conservatives can somehow spin this negatively.
I don't really understand how Ryan Turnbull can ask such a silly question. I don't understand how you can spin this. They're politicos. They spin things, guy. Be aware, like you're one of the spinners. You should know. What we're gonna do next is Lawrence Macaulay. He's one of the more senior guys in the House, probably the most senior. He's an MP from Prince Edward Island for over 30 years. Poliev has a question for him, and it doesn't seem like he's really in touch anymore. I'm not picking on him, just saying retirement probably isn't too far away.
Leader of the Opposition.
Their idea of helping farmers is putting in an $11,000 tax on one farm for 1 month. One farm, 1 month, $11,000. Now, they want to quadruple the tax on Canada's farmers. That will do nothing except for send the food production to more polluting foreign countries and forcing us to burn more diesel to transport it all the way back to Canada. So why don't they bring home food production and axe the tax on farmers?
The Honourable Minister for Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Mr. Speaker, number one, we have a climate plan, and we will continue to deal with the climate plan. If we do not deal with climate, we increasingly put up the price of food. We have invested in farmers right across this country. We're going to make sure that farmers and ranchers stay on the cutting edge. We deal with climate change, because if we do not deal with climate change, like every country in the world is, we will continue to raise prices in the world.
Old Larry McCauley says that every country on the planet is fighting climate change. Is he crazy? How out of touch must you be to think that that's true? To put that out in your answer. It's ridiculous. I like the guy. Time to retire. Poliev is up last, and the best part is going to be the answer that Adam Van Coverden gives. He messes it up. Poliev is asking about Canadian farmers, and Van Coverden tries to fire back with Ukraine farmers, and he botches it. It's definitely funny, worth a look.
The opposition.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years, they still don't have a plan to fight climate change over there. What they have is a plan to quadruple a tax that has failed to fight climate change, giving Canada the 58th ranking out of 63 countries, missing every target but one in 8 years, and on track to miss their targets in 2030. So stop distracting from the real agenda here, which is to take money away from farmers, from food, and from the necessities of Canadian life. Will they, yes or no, announce their support for the Senate passing common sense Conservative Bill C-234 to take the tax off the farmers who feed us?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know who knows a thing or two about farming and climate change? That's the farmers who work in the breadbasket of the world, Ukrainian farmers. And you know who asks Canadian parliamentarians to vote for the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement? Ukrainian farmers. So did the Ukrainian-Canada Congress. So did President Zelensky himself. Ukrainian farmers are betrayed by this federal government. That's the people who grow. Canadian farmers are betrayed by those conservatives. Apologies for the misstep.
Van Coverden's answer didn't sound good from the get-go. The breadbasket of the world? The Ukrainian farmers are best? The federal government is betraying the Ukraine? The Liberals are the federal government, dum-dum. He just doesn't get it. He spoke too much today. I'm Ehren. This is Question Period Canada. We're having fun with Canadian politics right here. This highlights show will bring you a concentrated dose of all the information and entertainment, the best parts of Question Periods Daily. We'll be doing that moving forward. We also cover the question periods from the Commons. We cover the question periods from the Senate. It's great. We make other videos too. Lots of shorts. You can check any of those out. That's it. Like and subscribe. We're having fun here with Canadian politics. We're going to send you out on watching that Adam Van Coverden clip one more time. We're going to put it to music, put a little mask on him at the end to make him look as dumb as he actually sounded. That's what we'll be doing. Enjoy this last clip. We're heading out. Thanks for watching. Check you out next time.
Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know who knows a thing or two about farming and climate change? That's the farmers who work in the breadbasket of the world, Ukrainian farmers. And you know who asks Canadian parliamentarians to vote for the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement? Ukrainian farmers. So did the Ukrainian-Canada Congress. So did President Zelensky himself. Ukrainian farmers are betrayed by this federal government. That's the people who grow